When you hear about finances or wealth building, how do you feel? Well, I'll tell you, before 8 years ago, I knew very little about money and it gave me anxiety. And the funny thing is, I actually wrote this podcast, probably about 3 or 4 months ago, because I think it's important to talk about, especially as recovering kind people, because that was part of my challenge of my relationship with money. And I've put it off and put it off until I just could resolve through all of those things. But I think it's important to talk about, as a kind girl, how that affects our relationship with money, or as a recovering kind person. So let's talk about it. So I did not know much about finances or wealth building. I had not paid the bills before. My husband didn't really have me participate because he didn't feel like I was very good at it. And that was actually partly my problem, because I did kind of have a fear and kind of an anxiety around money, and I still have to work through that. We had a budget when I was first married, and had little kids, but it was used against me because I chronically would overspend in groceries, and I felt like a budget, I was always in trouble, and it just didn't have a good connotation at that time. I also had very much a scarcity mindset. Not only was I adopting in my previous marriage, the challenge of that, I was adopting a belief that I wasn't enough. I also was adopting a belief that I didn't have enough. So I had a scarcity mindset about myself and a scarcity mindset about money. And we did have 4 little kids, and it was very tight. I mean, it was challenging. But I really had ideas about, it wasn't good to want money, and it always fascinated me. So that's what I want to talk about, because then I went to becoming a single mom with no child support or alimony, and I was just starting my business as a realtor, and I was wondering, how am I going to get through this? So the big thing I would say is God. I mean, I probably say that a lot. God, universe, just that loving, I know that He's got me. I know He's going to help me get through all of this, and really having to change my own thinking about money and myself. So I really spent a lot of time applying myself to learning about money, finances, wealth building, and my mindset on trauma too, because a lot of the thoughts that I had going on in my mind regularly were things that were not helping me and was taking a lot of energy. And so when I was cleaning up all of those thoughts, it freed up my mind to actually learn better, to actually work through things like wealth building and money, because, I knew I needed to have money to survive, and I even wanted more. And it was just trying to figure out, how could I do that? And why do I want more? And first, my reason for wanting more was because, gosh, I needed to help pay for the kids, and I wanted to be free of not being entangled financially with my husband, because there was financial control in that, because he worked, I was at home, and there was some financial control as part of that. So I wanted freedom from that. And then also it transformed into, I wanted to help others that were in a situation like me, where one of the reasons why I didn't leave 5 years into the relationship, when I knew how destructive it was to me, was financially. I had a little baby, physically wasn't doing well, I mentally wasn't doing well, and financially I did not know how I could take care of myself at that time. And so just wanting to help others was really important to me. And that's why I eventually started the nonprofit Hope Harbor Transitional Living, that helps others in this area with rental assistance, growth planning assistance, and counseling after getting out of a domestically destructive relationship, because I knew how that felt and it didn't feel good. So let's talk more about this. So as I said, became a single mom. I applied myself to learning about money and working on my mindset. I also incorporating generosity right off the get-go. I mean, I feel like a lot of people say it, I'll be generous later. But I started right away, and I didn't start at the 10% mark or any other conception. I really just checked in with myself to start and found ways to be generous. And that is I feel like we're designed for that, and it really helps. And then I slowly made money my friend. And I really like us to think of money like that. It's like a relationship. And how are we going to perceive it? What energy are we going to put into it? Is it taking up too much space in our mind, giving it too much attention in our lives? Is it not getting enough? For me, as an overly kind girl, it was not getting enough at all. In fact, I think it was more I'll just kind of ignore you and be kind of curious about you, maybe talk a little bad about you, but expect you to like work, to be my friend. And it doesn't really work that way. Just like in regular friendships, it doesn't work that way with having a relationship with money. So let's talk about it. So I started off as a single mom. Let's see, how many years ago was that? About 7 years ago. So I started off with 300,000 because of the divorce. And that was from, I didn't get alimony or child support, but that basically was a combination of what was in the house. So I was able to get, some equity of the house and what was retirement. So that was the total. And the wild thing is, I became a millionaire in 5 years. And I have to be honest, I didn't even know what a millionaire was. But basically, if you add up all your assets and then you subtract what you owe, and if you have 1 million, you're a millionaire. And that's not the end of the story. Da da da. Because that sounds like, oh, that's a great story. There's always more to it. So let's just talk about, before I get back to the da-da-da, and let's just talk about the subconscious ways I was viewing money and the journey I've had with my relationship. So my money thoughts were like money can corrupt people. And I think it doesn't actually corrupt people. I think it's kind of like alcohol. It brings out more of who you are. And it creates more opportunities, which can be used for good or for bad. But I definitely generally had an idea that money can corrupt people. And so there was this fear around it. And then liking money was wrong. So that was another thing, because to me, that was like liking money meant you're materialistic. And then the question was, is that starting my own business, a single mom, can I make enough money? Was making money a fluke? And I just think that's so interesting. I was talking to my daughter's boyfriend a couple nights ago, and I just had to laugh because we were talking about finances, and he's got a little bit of college debt, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not worried about it. I'm great at making money." And I'm like, "Wow, that is such a cool mindset that I'm great at making money." And I have to tell you, I'm not even there now. But that is such a great thinking. And to start like that when you're younger, I'm like, wow, that's incredible. So, and then another thing I've had to work through more recently is I can't have money in a great relationship. And that came from seeing all these relationships where they had money and they just weren't getting along and it just didn't look like a good relationship. So I had this belief that it's like, oh, if you have money, you can't have a great relationship. So that doesn't work well when I'm in my marriage with my husband if I have that belief. So I also thought it's not kind to talk about money, and that's partially why it took me so long to do this podcast. And I don't want to have anything off limits in this podcast because being an overly kind person and looking at our mindset, our beliefs and stuff like that, it really goes into every area of our lives. And that's why I wanted to bring this up and also free you up to know what is possible for you, because I believe so much is possible for you and for me, and just working on our mindsets about that. So that's another reason why I'm a life coach, but I'm a hypnotherapist as well, because I combine those two together, because the life coaching goes on our conscious beliefs, and the hypnotherapy, we can get to the subconscious beliefs, which are running 90% of our programming. And a lot of those subconscious beliefs come in our childhood. It can be, things that our parents have said or what we've translated from our childhood. And it's so good to just kind of root those out if we want to have our own conscious new beliefs about money. And so I just think it's great to work on both of those aspects. And then for me, I had to create new patterns and habits around money. So let's talk about my journey. So it went from, in my previous marriage, I spent money on the kids first, the husband first, and rarely spent money on myself. So my first habit I had to change like 8 years ago was that I was valuable enough to have what I wanted. And so how I did that is after I had a closing, I would buy myself a small gift, something that I really wanted, but I wouldn't let myself have previously because I kind of wanted to retrain my brain and my habits. And so that was the first thing. And then another thing is I started my business like, oh, you know what? If I just serve and add value, I'm just going to have enough, which is good And you also have to know your books. You have to know your numbers. So I got a business coach, and oh my goodness, he worked on me, and he's like, you got to know your numbers. And honestly, looking at my numbers at first was like anxiety. It's like, oh, because I had some associations with that. And so working through my mindset, but also my habits of looking at where money was going, what it was doing, and looking at that at least a couple times a month, and just kind of I had to just make myself, and I still do, because it's definitely a little bit more work in that area for me. So taking ownership over things and being a good business person, that was a new frame of thinking for me as well. And then now with my husband Mike, we actually have a budget, dun dun dun, because it's really helpful. And I had to work through all my thinking. I know, we had consciously decided if we're going to get somewhere, we have to have a plan. So we need to have a budget so we can have intention. So the budget wasn't like to control, like I had experienced before. The budget was to focus on what we wanted, and we made those decisions together. And oh my goodness, the anxiety in my chest, just starting that process and choosing to do that was really big. And then understanding the way that my husband's relationship with money is, he's more of a live in the moment, and I'm more of a future focused. And so, just kind of getting that together to work through that was really important in this. And so creating a pattern of doing like a budget and focusing and working through all of that mindset has been another part of this relationship with money. I think something really important to know is that actually money is quite neutral. And my friend Kim, actually, she's a wealth manager. And she was really good at explaining to me, because it's easy to judge people like where they want to put their money, but money is actually neutral. And it's more about, what does it mean? Like, does that latte that person is getting mean that they are so treasured and that's their self-love and they can afford it? Then great. And then for me, maybe that's not what it means, and maybe I want to put that towards something else. But those things and how we spend our money are really neutral. So it's that balance of, what does it mean? Like, what is it giving us? And what is it helping us do our conscious goals at the same time? And so I loved that Kim taught me that money is really neutral. So now, as I talked to you before about like the dun dun dun, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that, because basically the beginning of this year, I definitely, up till like most of this year, definitely had some financial struggles. And I definitely had to remember the basic wealth mindset. So now we're going to talk about just like some basic wealth mindset and getting back in touch with that. And the funny thing is, once I, like I said, created this podcast a while ago and really focused on this, my wealth circumstances have gotten a lot better. But it's just like going to these basics and having that basic wealth mindset. So the first basic wealth mindset is be content and grateful and strive for what you want. And that is really a balancing thing. And I had to just like think through some things as far as like, what is my why for making money? Because my why has changed as far as like, but really understanding that why, like, why do I want more money? Why is it important to me? It's important for us to know that, because it can be very motivating or very demotivating, depending on what our why is. And so it's really important. So that's the first one. Be content, grateful, and you can strive for what you want. I think in that it's really important that we don't have the idea that it's better there when we have the money than here. Because the truth is, it's not in general. They say, they've done a lot of studies on this, and they say once you have your basic, pay your bills stuff, which that is super important. Beyond that, as far as being better here than there, it's not as significant when it creates joy and happiness. It's more about like relationships and how we're viewing things than actual like that it's better. So that's really a good thing to know. Number 2, important thing to know is that God is our provider and we can trust him. And I think that's super huge. There's some really great verses in the Bible that talk about how, God takes care of the lilies of the field. And so, of course, he's going to take care of you. There's also some really good things in the Bible that says money has wings and can fly away. And I've seen that too. So I think it's really important to just understand that God, universe, is a provider. We can trust that. And the third is that it all starts with our mindset and our beliefs and really challenging our beliefs and our lessons we've learned and kind of going from there. So for me, as far as mindset and belief and being honest with myself, with this year, I had to be brutally honest and be like, well, I'm at this place, which is way lower than I'd like to be or where I have been. And this is why, because I haven't done this, I haven't done this, I haven't done this. And I saw this problem, but I didn't correct it. So I just had to be super honest about like, this is where I'm at because of my actions and my mindset and work on that. So it all starts with mindsets and beliefs and honesty.
Are you a chronic people pleaser? Do you overgive, overfunction, pretty kind, and you're just tired, or maybe even a little bit resentful? Or are you wondering, like, wow, is this all to life? Is this how it works? Because I kind of feel like I'm going through the motions. Well, that's what the Unravel Notebook is for. It's 61 days to unravel our thinking, beliefs, and live a life intentionally as we connect closer with God, ourselves, and others so we can be more confident and live brighter in this world.
And then it's good to be like a fourth has to do with being honest too. Is like be honest and kind, but live for your future you. Because you want to be like, I didn't want to be kind and like, I didn't want to be critical. Like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe you did that. I cannot believe you did that. Rather than like, oh, I see that you did that. And, I see why you did that. But that's not going to get you where you want in your future you. So we kind of need to evaluate that and just owning it. Just being like, okay, I am the problem here. I own it. So I really like Brooke Castillo. She's actually has a great podcast. She talks about money quite a bit because her whole big why is to be an example of what is possible as a woman. And she has her life coach school, and that's actually where I have one of my life coach certifications. And just fabulous. But her story is really interesting because she did the assets versus liability when she first started, like doing the work on herself. And she was negative a lot. And just starting there. And then now she's a multimillionaire. But it really started with like brutal honesty and working through the mindset. And now she's an example of what is possible for women and having greater opportunities. So being honest and kind, but living for our future you. And then the fifth one is being generous. And that doesn't always have to be financially because our generosity can be our time, our energy, our money. It can be a lot of different things. But generosity, I believe we're made for being generous. And but I will tell you, I've known people that have been generous to a place where it's like not serving them or taking care of their family. And you always have to, there's usually beliefs in there that need to be like evaluated. But generosity is huge. This is an example of somebody who probably needed the money and felt in their heart that they needed to give it away, and it really did impact him. And that's Tony Robbins. A lot of you guys have heard of Tony Robbins. If not, please look him up. He is just one of the best self-help. He's just, gosh, is a wonderful person. And he started off with nothing and was sleeping in his car until he changed his mindset and started again with mindset. But when he was really young, he didn't have, he had his last $30 and he actually gave it away to a young boy that had inspired him that was, doing something. He gave his last $30 away. And it was really cool because in that same day, he received a check that he wasn't expecting. And for him, he was just reminded of, yes, God is going to take care of you and how that generosity is so important. And it was life-changing for him. And he has he has a huge amount of businesses and is very wealthy and still puts a lot of time and energy into helping others. So, and I would say the sixth thing as far as our money mindset and wealth mindset is know your goals and have a plan. Because without a plan, it's difficult to get there. So again, the six things that are in our money mindset is number one, be content and grateful, and we can still strive. Number two, God is our provider. We can trust him. It all starts with our mindset and belief and have an abundant mindset rather than a scarcity, even now. Like whatever you're at, it's always a mindset of abundance that matters more than a number, because that number can change in our mind all the time and in our checkbook. Be honest and, number 4, be honest and kind of live for future you. Number 5, be generous with time, resources, money. And number 6, know your goals and plans. So give a little thought. Like, is money your friend? Do you guys hang out much? Do you have a good feeling towards your friend? Or how do you treat it? Is it flippant like I used to be? Is it overly important where it's taking up too much brain power in your life? Is it come from an idea of not enoughness or an abundance? Do you try to ignore it? Do you talk to it much? Do you talk to it negatively? Do you talk negatively about others that have it? Because, for example, if you think that, they must be screwing someone over to get that money, or they just, if you have that mindset, you're not going to attract money, because of course you're not going to want to do that if you view people that have money negatively. Do you know your finances? Do you understand your mindset around money? So that's, as a recovering kind girl, it's just been a journey. Like I ignored it. I talked negatively about it. I somehow hoped we would be good friends, but I really had to start changing my mindset 1% at a time. So I want to just end with a short visualization. So I just want you to just take a couple deep breaths, belly breaths. So take a deep breath in. And I want you to take a deep breath out, long breath out. And one more deep breath in. And one more long breath out. And I want you to just pause and think about your relationship and views on money and abundance. And just give yourself a few seconds to have an honest evaluation of that. And then just keep taking deep breath in. And deep breath out. And a deep breath in. And a deep breath out. And I want you to just think about and be grateful for the things that you do have. I think focusing on the little things, the relationships, the abundance in your heart. So just give some gratitude for what you do have. And just take a few deep breaths in. And take a deep breath out. Another deep breath in. And breathe out slowly. And feel free to conjure up what you really want when it comes to financially. And the why. Like, why do you want it? And then just visualize that you have it. And I want you to feel the emotion of how that feels. What would you be doing? What would you look like? What would you be experiencing? And keep taking a deep breath in and breathing out slowly. And I want you to hold the emotion of how that feels. And I want you to open your eyes. And that is the emotion I want you to live in. To live like it's already there. You already have it, because that's where it starts. Make it a great day. I believe in you.